we heard earlier on this morning that Carl stood up and talked about saying thank you. I'm going to reword that and say, what about appreciation? You know, from a coaching perspective, how important that we would guess a coach would be encouraging, but how appreciation fits in. Where does that fit in?
Yeah, it's a crucial aspect of getting the best out of people. So if somebody does something well, then tell them. Just say, look, I thought you were great today. You did really well, or you worked really hard, or you couldn't have given any more. Something very simple that it takes 2 seconds to say, but makes that person feel rewarded and really good about themselves, and you know, you get more from them. Sure. At the end of the day, it's about building. It's about building something. You know, regardless of the industry, it's about building something. You know, we want to achieve excellence, but how do we achieve excellence? Well, we need people to contribute.
And this phrase, cultural architects, what does that actually mean? Because in the world of sport, I've heard that 6, 7, 8 times in the last 2 months, where it just keeps bobbing up. But what does it mean from a business context? You know, how do you transfer? What is it? How does it work?
Yeah, it's having people within your organisation that live, eat, and breathe the values. Lead by example. You know, if we're in a position of authority as a leader, and we are telling somebody, okay, take it as a football manager, and they want to play in a certain way. What they very, very cleverly do is they'll take key people, the captain and one or two of the key members of the team, the ones that are right up there, world class, and you know, some of the junior members of the team or the younger players that are coming through will follow that person. And quite often, you know, coming from one voice, yeah, you know, it's like, but then when it's coming from a person that they're next to on the field or in the room, and they're seeing how they behave and they act. So it's all down to behaviours and actions, as opposed to that cultural architect won't necessarily say, look, we've got to do this. They'll do it, and the person next to them will follow. So it's a very important aspect of when you're working in teams, in whatever industry, that you've got people within your organisation, within that team, that will lead by example.
You talked about letting people speak first, and again, I think, you know, when I look at it, because I spend a lot of time around this particular marketplace, and it's a fast-paced, highly reactive environment where people, they don't get time potentially to talk as much as they should. But how do you create the right space? How do you create the right environment to enable people to talk? You know, as a coach, express themselves first, because, as you rightly said, telling folks what to do and dictating to them doesn't feel like the right thing to do to me either. Getting people to be engaged because they're helping you to plan the battle or their own battle, then there's a likelihood the plan will succeed. But it's a case of, you know, how do we engineer that? You know, what do you do to create that environment to start with?
Just be curious, ask questions, ask them what they think. There's 2 things that will do. First of all, it will make them feel valued, like they're an important part of the team, regardless of their role. Just ask them the question. And the second thing is, you actually get to hear what they really think. Because if you're in the position of authority, and you know, they don't want to bite the hand that feeds them, I guess. And what happens there is that you get to really understand what they are thinking, which is going to benefit you as the leader, you know, the person that's leading the team. You know, if you can hear from 3, 4, 5 key people before you then come in with your thing, you know, that's such an important thing.
You're obviously working in the world of elite sport at the highest level, winning gold medals. What would you say to somebody in a builder's merchant branch where their team, a number of those, come in on a day-to-day basis, they do their job, they do what they're told, they don't do anything wrong, they're not undermining what's going on, but they never exceed expectation. They just deliver on what they're told to do. What would be your thoughts on that, and how we could create maybe something different, better? Would you change it? How could you do it?
I would say, rather than blame the person, the employee, why don't we ask ourselves, are we setting the conditions to allow that person to flourish? So why are they behaving in that certain way? Why are they just turning up, doing their job and then going home. It's transactional. Is it because it's too much of a transaction? What are we doing to create something that's more transformational? So I would look at myself in that situation, ask myself a question, and that's what I said about, you know, being curious. Why? I wonder why this person is behaving and the person next to them isn't. You know, they're operating in the same area of the business or the same area of the team, same pay grade, but this person's doing it, you know, 9 out of 10. This one is probably 6 out of 10. And why is that? What am I doing what can I do to affect some change there? So I would ask myself the question as a leader, and not just blame the person in front of them.
So is that, technically, I guess that's the difference between transactional leadership and transformational leadership. If you had to just sum up to finish in a sentence, you know, how, in your experience, does transformational work at its best? You know, when you talk about transformational leadership, how does it work at its best?
It's when it's more of a shared event. So transaction, it is a transaction. It's very, you know, I will pay you an amount of money, and you give me something in return. Okay, and you see a lot of that. You know, I see a lot of that in coaching, particularly, as opposed to, look, this is your level. Or, you know, where are you at? Where would you like to be? Where would you like to go? What is it you want from me? How can I help you? And then, you know, it becomes, you've got to inspire somebody. It's about inspiring people. And if they're not inspired to do something, then ask yourself, why am I not able, as a leader, why am I not able to inspire this person? So transformation is when you transform something. You're affecting change through your own behaviours and actions to impact somebody else's behaviours and actions. And the result, you know, will always take care of itself. It's a byproduct of doing things with excellence or not.
Very good. Brilliant place to end. Round of applause for David.